Hi, and welcome to the Your Story Studios podcast, a podcast where we talk about all things content creation. Today, we are joined by Kaiser, and today we are talking about etiquette on set. So, Kaiser, what is etiquette on set?
Good question. So, etiquette on set, and that's a topic that is quite important to me as somebody who has, my background in filmmaking is going to film school. I'll put that in air quotes, and
Not YouTube University, actual
film school where we were taught, the traditional practices of how a set is run, and with that comes a lot of there's a lot of discipline, there's a lot of hierarchy, and a lot of respect for everybody's specific roles, and so that's a topic that's quite important to me whenever I'm on a project. And the reason for that is because it just maintains a level of professionalism. It keeps a production running and feeling professional. I'm all for tradition. I like maintaining practices that have been set up and proven for decades now. So that always for me helps a project run more smoothly. It also helps a lot whenever I'm on a project. I like to maintain all these traditional film set practices. Despite the project not being a proper big film set, it could just be a simple solo production. I like to run the set as if it was. So, I like to carry out all the same sort of all the procedures, all the sort of all the lingo we use on set as well. It also helps the client feel that they're in very experienced, capable hands when these guys are talking some technical jargon and stuff like that.
They don't understand.
They don't understand. It sounds so cool to them, seeing it all run. I like upholding all of those things that I was taught. And for me, I do come across some productions I've worked on or see that don't really follow the etiquette. So I like to make it a point to make sure that that where appropriate, it's not always appropriate on whatever production, but to make sure it does run to some sort of level of professionalism.
Excellent. So if you were to walk onto a set, can you just talk us through, for someone that's never been on a film production set or a video production set, whatever you want to call it, what would it look like, and talk about that hierarchy and what good etiquette looks like?
Certainly. Well, on a traditional film set, you have departments. You've got you've got your lighting department, you've got your camera department, you've got your hair and makeup, you've got your production design, you've got your art. So all of those typically have their own people assigned to those departments. You've got your heads of those departments as well, and they are in those roles because they're good at it. That's what they do. So it's unusual to see those departments cross over. Everyone sort of sticks to their lanes, basically. That's not always possible for a production because a lot of these days there are very small scale productions where it's only a handful of crew members or even a solo production. So you can't always have every department covered by a specialized person.
Yeah, because sometimes you've got one person doing light, sound, camera, production assisting, directing, producing. I've listed 6 things already.
Yeah. And like that's certainly not unheard of. Yeah, I've done it. I'm sure you've done it as well. I'm sure many people in this industry have played the sort of jack of all trades or the wearer of many hats sort of thing. And that's what sort of leads me on to another point where it's not always feasible to have your hierarchy on set where everyone has their own duty. But also, I think when we're doing a sort of skeleton crew or a solo person job, you still want to have those sort of lanes and know where when you can cross over. If you're in camera you can certainly work in lighting. You've got those sort of disciplines cross over a bit. And when you're also setting up shots, for example, you're also dictating a bit of the production design. What sort of things go on in our background, in our foreground, so those sort of things. And then like that's good to have, but I think it's when you sort of step onto a set where, let's say, the budget's bigger and there is now a bigger crew, a bigger production, you have to sort of step back and realize where your place is. You don't want to be stepping on the toes of the gaffer if you're if you're doing sound, that's not really your business, and vice versa. You don't really want to be telling as a sounder, you don't really want to be telling the DOP where to stage their shots, because it might sound better over here or over there, but there are certainly those balances to find, between what's best for both that department and that department. Knowing your position on a production is always key, so you're not stepping on each other's toes. You're not being the person who comes onto a set and just starts to really impose yourself, because if you start doing that on a big budget job and with crews, these professional industry veteran crews, you'll most likely never work with them again, because they will not want you back, because you are a nuisance. So I think it's important to just understand your role, know when to cross over when it's appropriate, and also know when to stick with what you know.
Yeah, I think in life there are rules, and it's good to know the rules, but it's also good to know when the rules can either be flexed or broken.
Mm-hmm.
When would you say it is okay to break etiquette on set, or is there a time? And if there is, how would you encourage someone to go about it in a way that would be favorable for them?
It's probably in the case now, especially nowadays when productions are so scaled down. We as video creators are really sort of skilled up to do a lot of things. I think going into the production and knowing in advance that's the sort of environment you'll be entering, I think that's certainly a case for understanding. Okay, yes, I know I'm just the cinematographer in this job. I know that there is no lighting person. There is a soundy, so that's great, but I'll have to be doing the job of the gaffer as well. Or alternatively, you've got a camera assistant. There is no lighting department, and you're the one that's sort of calling the shots. You're the camera assistant, and you're helping to just set up the lights. So look, that's all those scenarios are very very common these days. And as long as you and your production team, if there is a team with you, know that those are the circumstances you'll be faced with on set, then yes, I think absolutely you have an understanding. And hopefully you worked with these crews before, so you guys know you know how to work well together in that sort of collaboration. Because filmmaking is a collaborative process. But on the other side of that, so when you should not break the rules is when you are, firstly, I think just in sort of common sense terms, if you're coming into a production and you're not so well versed in that environment, firstly, understand that you're possibly not the center of attention there. You're kind of the outlier perhaps, and just you are hired for a specific role. Stick to that role, because the other people around you have been hired for their specialist skills and they know what they're doing, and so they stick to their lanes, and that's the way the production has been set out to be run. And there's no reason to break that, unless there could be some 1 in a million circumstance when there was something goes wrong. The gaffer's best boy happens to.
What's the best boy?
The best boy is basically the assistant to the gaffer, so helping them set up the lights, carrying the equipment, setting up the equipment. So if that person for some reason is not able to perform their duties on set, I'm sure as the camera assistant with your knowledge of how to set up a light stand, a C stand, can certainly lend a hand, First by asking though. So again, always communicate on set. That's also part of set etiquette. Communication is key. So understanding what's going to happen, who is involved, and how it's going to be performed. I think all those sort of communication points are very important as well to keep a set running.
Yeah. And in your time in doing video production, have you ever, or I'm sure you have, that's why we're doing this episode, but talk me through an experience where you've gone on to set and etiquette just wasn't there. What was the vibe on set? What happened? Can you tell me any cool stories about being on set and the etiquette just wasn't there?
It probably weren't cool stories because they were certainly scenarios where I've come onto a production and the vibe of how the set was run was very very lax, very and look, this is going back to what I said earlier. I like when things are run with the traditions of running a film set. So
There's order,
there's order, absolutely.
not chaos.
No, that's
And it
it.
sounds like that this set had chaos.
Yeah, and it also relates to the fact that it seems like a lot of productions, because they are they see themselves as we're just a low budget set. We don't really care about those sort of things.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter. I think there are still some procedures that need to be followed to just ensure that the set runs properly. And so yeah, as some examples, I've come onto sets where I am the director of photography. There is a director there who is probably, let's say, not so experienced as a director role and really doesn't know the etiquettes of set. So even simple things as calling action on a set seems to have action and cut have seemed to sort of just gone away. So yeah, like for example, the director wouldn't even say action. Like they'd probably just say something like, "Okay, go for it." Like, sure, it still gets the same point across. Yeah, it's still we'll trigger the what action is supposed to trigger, but the act of saying action and cut, and even things like calling the roll, the sort of procedure just to get ready for shooting a shot. So traditionally,
First positions.
stuff like that. Yeah. So first positions. If you've got a clapper, get a clapper in there. Call set for focus and stuff like that, and then even calling turnover. So that's rolling your cameras, rolling your audio, and then of course action. So those sort of things, I find a lot of times for these smaller jobs are just non-existent, and so I always want to try and bring those back in. So for this particular example, I would always want to make it verbally known. I can, firstly, this is again talking about not crossing lanes. I don't want to get in the way of the director. They're there to direct the production. But if I'm sort of noticing they're sort of just really, they're just about to going to a take without even the camera being quite ready, possibly the talent not even ready, and they're just about to say, "I'll go for it." I'll always sort of just chime in with a, "Okay, camera is set." So just make it very verbally known.
Communication.
Just really make it clear, loud and clear, and that's usually enough to sort of catch that person his attention and really just to be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure, yep." Or and me saying, just getting focus again, just making sure that making it loud and clear that I'm not quite ready. You shouldn't just launch straight into this because we should have had these. We should have gone through these procedures to make sure that everybody's ready and everybody knows what they're doing. That's probably an example where I've personally found a way to try and bridge the gap between having no etiquette and try and bring that etiquette on set. Also in a way that's not really crossing any lanes. I say again, I don't want to get in the way of a director because you do not want to get in the way of a director, but if there are things that aren't happening on a set that might impact how that set can be run efficiently, you'll have to speak up. And in my case, it was just being verbally clear about making sure some procedures are adhered to and everyone knows where we're at in that stage.
Yeah, and just being respectful, I think, with other people in their roles. If the director isn't saying action and cut, it's probably not wise to turn to them and say, "Hey, why don't you say action and
Yeah.
cut?" and like kind of talk down to them
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
set in front of other people. If you do need to address it, it would be wise to take them, not take them aside, but just talk to them when others aren't all paying attention
Yeah.
and say, "Hey, it'd be really helpful if you said action and cut, just so I know I'm ready." And it might help the actor or presenter or whoever is the talent in front of the camera do their job properly.
It's even, yeah, just on that point of saying action. It's even just like everybody really knows what action is now. It's so ingrained in what everyone expects of a film set, of a recording of some sort. So action. So that even gets the talent who may be experienced, depending on what sort of job you're doing. They hear action and they know, oh, cool. Okay, so this is real now. So rather than just be like, okay, just when you're ready, like you really just gotta snap them into that moment. And things like saying action, as simple as it is, really helps in that regard, I think.
Yeah, and I think a lot of etiquette has been lost, particularly on the types of shoots that I do. You're in smaller teams, so it might just be me and a producer working with some talent who are in front of camera, so maybe one or two different people,
Mm.
and that talent this could be their very first video. They don't know what first positions is. Yes, they've heard action and cut, so that doesn't need to be explained. But I think maybe we've lost that etiquette because we've got a little bit lazy in some regards, I guess, and we don't want to have to teach these people all the different terms and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff every single time we go to a set, which is a bit of a shame, I think, because I can kind of relate to that. Like, oh, do I really need, like, how many times are they going to be doing this in the future? Do I really need to teach them?
Yeah.
Well, it only takes a few seconds to go through some key etiquette terms, I think, just so we're all on the same page. Because if I start saying, all right, first positions, they'll probably look at me and be like, huh?
Mm.
But if I just say, all right, first positions is the starting action right from the start of where we're going to record. So at the end of the take, we're probably going to do a couple of takes. So once we finish and you hear cut, I'll then say first positions, and then I'll just get you to go back to walking over to that door or whatever the action is that they're doing. So
Yeah, exactly right. So communication is key. Like I said before, communication is part of that etiquette on set, just making sure that people know what they're doing. If you want to use your technical film set jargon to your crew, great, they'll know what that is. But make sure you also communicate to the less experienced people on set, whether it's clients or the talent. Just communicate with them, let them know what's going on. You don't have to use the film words, but at least still let them know about the procedures, and that will make sure that everybody, crew, talent alike, are all on the same page.
yeah, be as clear as possible. Yep, that's great. And Kaiser, to finish off today's episode, do you have any hot takes?
Yeah, hot takes. I reckon, in terms of speaking about the different types of productions, I've certainly come across many times where the budget of a project sort of determines how smoothly a set will run. And look, that might sound obvious, but it's sort of, in my mind, the opposite. So you think that a sort of small scale, cheap budget job would be pretty easy, versus a big, complex, expensive set. Certainly, yes, to some extent, but there is also the other side of that where the client expectations are so much more different. So you've got
And not in the way that you would typically think.
no, exactly. Yeah, you would think, you would hope that the client for the small scale job will just be like, great, I understand it's a small job, just going to be a quick and easy one. Oftentimes not. It's because they are they're spending such a tight amount of budget for them. They want to really squeeze every last drop out of it, versus a production that's got a lot more money. They've probably got a lot less to lose on this one. And so they're a lot more confident to leave a lot of the the creative decisions to the production team. And so I've often found that while it might seem that going into a small budget job might be easy, you might be going into a lot of stress going further down the production pipeline with client feedback, a lot of nitpicking, the sort of too many cooks sort of deal. So that's one of my things that I hope that people just sort of be wary of. That just sort of know what to expect, essentially.
Excellent. Well, Kaiser, thank you for joining us on the Your Story Studios podcast.
Thanks for having me here.